Every day, trillions of dollars flow through fiber optic cables, completely invisible, moving massive amounts of value across the globe. But the currency executing that modern magic started as something incredibly simple, just a heavy lump of metal. If you rewind to the 1500s, global trade didn't run on paper, and it certainly didn't run on credit. Instead, it operated entirely on physical silver. Look at this piece of history. This is the Spanish piece of 8. Because it was minted with an exact, universally verified weight of pure silver, merchants from Europe to the Americas and all the way to Asia accepted it without question. Around the same time, traders in Europe were exchanging another heavy silver coin called the taler. As the coin traveled along trade routes, varying regional accents found taler hard to pronounce, softening the sound over decades until it became dollar. System, you didn't need to trust the foreign government that minted the coin. You only had to trust the chemistry of the metal itself. If you held the silver in your hand, you held the wealth. When the United States won independence in 1776, its domestic economy was a disaster. Different states were minting their own competing coins, and none of them were standardized, making interstate commerce virtually impossible. To fix this fragmented structure, the first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, designed the Coinage Act of 1792. He needed to build a unified national financial system from scratch. Hamilton knew the young nation lacked global financial credibility. To solve this, he pegged the newly created US dollar directly to the exact weight of silver found in the widely accepted Spanish coins, instantly adopting their established global reputation. Those early American paper notes and newly minted coins carried no inherent authority. They operated entirely as a convenient, government-stamped receipt proving that you owned a specific amount of physical metal. As the economy matured, the US upgraded its financial mechanics by adopting the gold standard. The government declared every single paper dollar printed was backed by a fixed amount of physical gold in federal vaults. This created ironclad security. Citizens could literally exchange paper bills for gold. The paper held no value. The vault's gold did the actual work. By the end of World War II, the major powers of Europe were physically ruined. Factories were leveled, supply chains were broken, and their national currencies were collapsing under the weight of the conflict. The United States sat an ocean away from the bombing. Its infrastructure was completely intact, its industrial base was operating at maximum capacity, and it now held the largest reserves of gold on the planet. In 1944, leaders from Allied nations gathered at a hotel in Bretton Woods. They needed to engineer a stable system to restart global trade. This diagram illustrates the mechanics. Instead of every country trying to rebuild their own gold reserves, every other nation would peg the value of their currency to the US dollar. In return, the United States promised to keep the dollar strictly pegged to gold. Overnight, the behavior of global central banks shifted. Instead of hauling heavy shipments of gold across the ocean, countries simply started stockpiling US paper dollars in their own vaults. The US dollar became the central artery of international finance. Yet, even with this massive expansion, the entire global structure still relied on the promise that somewhere in America, a physical piece of metal justified the math. Then, in 1971, President Richard Nixon unilaterally severed that final link. Facing severe domestic economic pressure, the US abruptly ended the Bretton Woods Agreement, officially refusing to convert foreign dollars back into physical gold. As we see in this animation, the tether holding the system together snapped. This action converted the dollar into purely fiat money. A fiat currency relies entirely on government decree. It is backed by absolutely nothing tangible. This presents an obvious paradox. If the paper is objectively worthless, and there is no longer gold waiting to back it up, why didn't the global economy immediately collapse? The answer is trust. The intrinsic value of precious metal was replaced entirely by the sheer weight of the American economy, its military capability, and the global belief that the US system would not fail. You see this trust operating today through global commodities. When a nation buys oil, the barrels are priced and sold almost entirely in US dollars, practically forcing every country to hold massive dollar reserves just to keep their lights on. Because the world is functionally required to use the dollar for international trade, the United States can continuously print more currency without immediately collapsing its value. The sheer volume of global demand absorbs the excess supply. We started with a piece of silver you could weigh on a scale. Today, the world runs on digital entries on a central bank ledger, supported entirely by a universally agreed-upon fiction. Money is no longer a physical object. Understanding that money is actually an engineered system of belief, that is where true power lies. To navigate the modern economy, you have to decode the invisible systems running beneath it. And that is exactly what we do here at Zentrix FinX.